Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm Brenda Winkle, energetic leadership guide, psychic medium, and somatic coach for ambitious leaders who know their gifts are real and who want to stand fully in them. Here, you'll learn how to trust your intuition, embody your vision, and step into the freedom you've been craving, all without chasing more certifications or carrying stuff that does not belong to you. Every week, I'll share powerful practices and conversations with thought leaders and changemakers that help you transform your vision into embodied confidence, claim your gifts without apology, and lead with both clarity and freedom. Because your gifts aren't cute, they're powerful, they're real, and they're needed. Start today by downloading my free energy audit at brendawinkle.com/audit. It's the exact tool I use to track what's fueling me and what's draining me. It will help you discern between that hit of achievement and true joy so that you can lead with more clarity and impact. This is your space to stop proving, start embodying, and live fully in your gifts. Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. Hello, and welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about something from a different lens than we've talked about it before. We talked a lot about nervous system stuff, but we haven't really unpacked how that shows up in your daily life. What does it actually look like to be in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And what can you do to shift it? So that's where we're going today. I'm really excited about this conversation because the more granular we can make these concepts, the more awareness we can create. And everything begins to shift when we have an awareness about what it is to shift. So before we dive in, quick invitation, would you please go give the podcast your rating and review right now, wherever you're listening? Just a couple of sentences on Apple Podcasts and your 5-star rating, if that's what it feels true to you. It means more to me and to the podcast than I can even express. And it's one of the most important ways that we can help the podcast grow. And, if you watch the news cycle right now, you and I both know how important it is for heart-led, grounded, regulated leaders to step forward. You and I both know how important it is, especially in these current times, for a new kind of leader to really step forward. We need the heart-led, empathic, sensitive, loving, strong, assertive leaders to step forward now more than ever, or at least in our lifetimes, let's put it that way. So even the most successful leaders can find themselves stuck in patterns of a stress response and not even know it. I mean, ask me how I know. If we're not paying attention to our nervous system, if we're not paying attention to what's happening in our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations, it's really easy to mistake the signs of a stress response for other signs, like maybe a sign that you shouldn't be doing this. Or maybe you'll even begin to think that there's something physically wrong with you because you have to go nap for 3 hours. Well, I mean, sure, it's true. You might be tired. You might really be overworking, overstressed, and maybe you really do need those 3 hours of sleep. Or maybe it's that your body is in such a stress state, a chronic stress state, that you're in a flight response and your body perceives the best right action to take is to sleep so that you can do a little bit of escaping. So we're going to dive into that. And by the way, flight isn't the only stress response we can have, because when you know what a stress response looks like, how it's showing up for you in the day-to-day, then you can know more about how to support it within yourself, and perhaps how to even recognize it with people that you love, people that you're leading, people that you work with. So let's go ahead and talk about what is a stress response. So we use the word stress really loosely, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But from a purely scientific nervous system perspective, we need a little bit of stress to be able to give us some get up and go in the morning. I mean, even excitement is a form of stress in the body. That feeling of, oh, I need to go take an action. I need to go do this thing. I get to go do this thing. Even that's causing your body a little bit of stress. Stress by itself is not a bad thing. And I want to be really, really clear on that. Stress is not a bad thing. Now, your body has what's known in the nervous system world as a window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is how much your body can handle before it goes into an elevated stress reaction. So the window of tolerance is going to be different for every single person. And it might be different for every single person depending on what time of day, what else has happened in the day or the week, or even how you're feeling physically. So it's not like your window of tolerance is always going to be the same, and it's not easy to predict, which is why it's hard to talk about these things because with our sweet little brains, we want it to all make sense. We want it to all fit in numerically and say, if X equals Y, then Z. And sometimes it works that way, but more often than not, when it comes to nervous system work, it's a little bit more nuanced, which is why it's so important for you to understand your own body, your own sensations, and how you respond. So, if we're talking about the window of tolerance, we're talking about the amount of external stimulation and stress that your body can withstand before needing to turn on the stress hormones. So, when you're experiencing just a little bit of stress or you're within your window of tolerance, you have a little bit of those stress hormones that are going, which help you think, like cortisol and adrenaline. They help clarify thoughts and different things like that. You also have an equal balance, not at the same time, but you're flowing through some of the other hormones like serotonin and dopamine. And you also have, and this is a really important part, you also have your vagus nerve, which is online. Now, your vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the body. It's not like one long line. It's more like a big long tree, and it's got all these branches of the trees that start at the base of your skull and end up at the base of your spine. And it connects to literally everything, your whole spinal cord, all of the vertebrae, all of the nerves that are coming off of that. It connects to your organs, your digestive organs, your detoxifying organs. So we're talking about stomach, colon, spleen, pancreas, liver, kidneys, your heart. It's all connected to this vagus nerve. So when your vagus nerve is functioning properly because you're within your window of tolerance, everything's going well. You're feeling pretty good in the body. Even if there's something else going on, you're feeling pretty good in the body. You still have access to the prefrontal cortex of your brain. You also have access to the right and left sides of the brain, so you can access the analytical side as well as the creative side of the brain. All of that's happening as long as you stay within your window of tolerance with stress. Now, as you begin to ease out of the window of tolerance, in other words, there's more stress than the body can handle, a few things begin to happen. One thing that happens is your body, your nervous system shifts into sort of like a power saving mode that you might see on your phone when your phone battery gets really low. And this power saving mode of your nervous system is going to turn off the vagus nerve, and it's going to conserve energy by limiting access to your prefrontal cortex and your right and left brain. So you are not going to have access to your logic. You're not going to have access to your creativity. You're not going to have access to your discernment. And all of the energy is going to be focused on what's called the amygdala. The amygdala is your brain stem, and the sole purpose of the amygdala is to keep you alive. So it's making sure that your heart beats. It's making sure that you have the right stress hormone that you can run quickly if you need to get away from a tiger. It is not where you're going to have the creative breakthroughs. It's not where you're going to have deep thought. It's not where you're going to build relationships because we don't have that capacity when we're in this power saving mode where all of our brain's energy is now redirected to the amygdala. That's essentially what a stress response is. So when we get into this stress response, your nervous system, not your thinking brain, is going to decide how to respond based on the response. And there are four main stress responses that we often hear and talk about. Those are, and you probably heard of these too, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. They don't just affect your energy. They don't just affect your health, but they affect your intuition. They actually block your intuition, which is your clearest advantage. So when you're outside of the window of tolerance and you're in an active stress response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you no longer have the ability for clear thinking. You no longer have the ability to do the relating that can happen because that part of the brain is turned off and all the focus is on the amygdala, the reptilian brain, the one that's just keeping you alive. Your vagus nerve is turned off, which means you might notice some different kinds of sensations in your digestive tract, in your ability to detoxify. You might notice swelling in your legs. You might notice that you suddenly have constipation or diarrhea. You might notice you have heart palpitations. And by the way, I'm not simplifying any of these things, and I'm not saying that you should automatically assume that what I'm going to say inside this podcast episode is medical advice because I do not offer medical advice. I offer nervous system expertise. And so if you have anything that is concerning you physically, please go seek medical attention from your medical professional. So if we know that stress is going to limit your capacity for deep thought, for creativity and intuition, it makes it even more important as leaders to manage our stress. And one of the ways that we can do this is by understanding what stress actually looks like. It's one thing for us to say fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, but I don't know about you. For me, when I very first heard this term, probably in the 90s, I thought it literally meant that you would do those things, that you would like get in a fight, that you would run away, that you would freeze like a deer in the headlights. And fawn wasn't even a term then. So I didn't even think about that. So I'm curious, is that what you thought of the stress responses too? Did you think it had to be literal? And the truth is, it can be. It can be literally those things, but a lot of times it's more nuanced. It's more subtle. Why? Well, we're not actually running from tigers in most cases. And so it's going to show up differently than you might be expecting. So your leadership's operating system is the nervous system. And that's why I always say your nervous system is the real CEO. It's the CEO of your business. It's the CEO of your life. It's the CEO of your career. It's the CEO of your relationships. If your nervous system is constantly, consistently dysregulated, it's like having a CEO who is also dysregulated. And we all know what that looks like. So I want to ground this in some science for you. So if we look at the polyvagal theory, which is largely popularized by Stephen Porges, we know that in order to engage socially in a meaningful way, we have to be regulated, meaning we have to have our vagus nerve online in order for that to happen. Because according to the polyvagal theory made popular by Stephen Porges, we need the vagus nerve to be online in order to access our higher wisdom. And by higher wisdom, I'm simply talking about your prefrontal cortex, your right and left brain hemispheres. And so we're talking about your creativity, your logic, your intuition, your ability to synthesize ideas and data. Another really interesting source for this information is a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And it reads more like a textbook. So if you're into textbook kinds of things about these topics, it's a great one. If you're looking for something a little bit lighter, that's not That's not where I'd point you to. But if we look at the research is clear. Your stress is impacting your ability to think, to make decisions, to form relationships, to nurture relationships, to lead, to build the business, to make the decisions as the CEO of your life, relationships, and career. So we want to really think about how can we reframe this so that intuition is always present? What can we do to support the nervous system so that stress isn't scrambling the channel? So when we think about regulation, I'd love to bring to mind the imagery of clearing the static from a radio so that you can just dial it into that perfect frequency. That's what we're doing here. So when we look at fight, we're going to look at all four of these stress responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And we're going to talk about how they're actually showing up for you on a day-to-day basis. So maybe you can see yourself in some of this. It can show up literally in a fight where you're picking fights with your loved ones or your team or your colleagues, where you're argumentative and combative and you're like, why am I doing this? But you can't seem to stop. It can come up as micromanaging other people, being very controlling, forcing things to happen. And this is really present in a lot of business owners if they're forcing a launch or they're forcing a new product into the market. And, all signs are saying, hey, slow down, we need more information, but you're just moving ahead. It has to be, it has to be, it has to be, has to happen now. That's a fight response. It is also coming up for you if you find yourself over explaining, whether that's on a sales call or to your partner or to your potential clients or to your boss. If you're over explaining and you're like sort of aware that you're over explaining, but you cannot stop, you're in a fight stress response. And another sign that you might be in a fight response is criticizing yourself. That's right. If you have an inner mean girl or a guy that is talking behind the scenes, it's very likely that you are in a fight response where it's actually your body's attempt to keep you safe that has you in this locked up position of being in fight, excuse me, has you locked up in this position of being in a fight response. So it blocks intuition because it drowns out that subtle knowing, because it's cueing you into all kinds of external stimuli. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's the news, maybe it's other things that people are saying or other conversations. You're not able to slow down and quiet yourself within. And you're not even able to hear the whisper that says, slow down, rest, or delegate. When we can come into regulation from a fight response, you'll realize, oh, the launch doesn't have to be this week, or I could ask for help. Ooh, that's another sign you're in a fight response. If you find that you cannot ask for help, you're definitely in a stress response. If you find yourself saying after regulation, quality matters more than speed, you've re-regulated, and that's so good. And if you can get to the point where you realize rest will make you magnetic, ooh, this is good stuff. So this is all related to the fight response. So when we look at the map of the nervous system, we have two responses that are responding to the over or the hyper activation of the nervous system, and those are fight and flight. So let's look at flight for just a second. How fight shows up is the forcing, the rushing, the hustling, the controlling. How fight shows up is sort of leaving patterns in your life that aren't actually leaving, but they're not doing the things you want to do. So procrastinating on big opportunities. This might look like someone offers you an opportunity to go do professional development for a huge organization or to put your name on a list of other providers, and you sit on the email for 3 days. It can also, and this is very common in the entrepreneurial world, I'm sad to say, it can also look like signing up for endless courses instead of just taking action. where you sign up for course after course after course after course because you think if I just know more, then it's going to work. So you continue to chase certifications, you continue to chase external validation when the truth is, this is the flight response where your body is perceiving you taking the action to move forward on the thing that matters to you as an actual threat. And so if you find yourself in the place of like consistently chasing certifications and courses, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just in a chronic flight response. Another way this shows up is if you're avoiding financials. This might mean avoiding looking at your credit card or bank account or checking account numbers. If you're a business owner, it might mean putting your head down and kind of ignoring the numbers in your business. It can look like overspending. It can look like under earning. It can look like just complete avoidance where you are a very responsible person and all of a sudden, like your finances are kind of getting wobbly because you're not keeping track of them. Flight can also be the social media doom scrolling. So if you have ever landed on the couch and you have 93 things that you need to do, but all you can do is doom scroll on social media, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're in a flight response. Your body is literally like trying to get you to leave from the stress that is happening inside your body and mind. If you find your calendar jam packed, either with busy work or meetings that don't really matter, they're not income producing, they're not moving the needle in any real capacity, they're just keeping you busy, you are in a flight stress response. And how this blocks your intuition is it clouds that inner knowing. So the inner knowing says, you're ready, just take the next step. And it feels almost too simple, especially if you're in a flight response. You won't believe it even if you hear it, because the flight response is keeping your body escalated in an activated state. After you can regulate, then you'll know exactly what to do, and your intuition will speak to you in really productive ways, like send that email today, or apply for that thing today, or make that pitch you've been wanting to make today. Or look at the numbers. It's safe. Knowledge is power. Or maybe you'll hear yourself saying momentum matters more than perfection. Or maybe you'll even hear something literally that says, stay, don't run. This is your moment. So when we look at the fight and flight response, those are both the hyperactivation of the nervous system. In other words, the nervous system has determined a threat that you need to either run from or fight, and then it's showing up these ways in your daily life in really tangible ways. Now let's take a look at the other two, freeze and fawn. So freeze and fawn are both the hypoactivation of the nervous system, meaning that you don't have as much energy. So the reason that this would be useful as far as we look like biologically back to when our nervous systems were very, very like newly formed, we're new humans on the planet, we needed this freeze or fawn response to stay really safe so that we could not only hide from the tiger that was hunting us, but we can stay so still. We're not even breathing so that the tiger cannot find us. So the freeze and fawn are the hypo or the under activation of your nervous system. So when you're thinking to yourself, I just don't have the energy, I just have to sleep, it can literally be a stress response. Now, sleep can also be a part of flight, so there's some nuance here, but it often shows up in freeze. Another way it shows up is you have a laundry list as long as your arm of things to do. You're really excited to do them. And then the moment you sit down at your computer, you freeze and you cannot think of a single thing. You literally can't remember. And when you look at your to-do list, it doesn't even make sense and you don't know how to even start. You're not broken. You're not bad. You're in a nervous system response. You're in a freeze. You might also be in a freeze if you're avoiding inquiries about working with you or inquiries about opportunities for you. And you're excited about them on the one hand, and on the other hand, You don't return the texts or the calls or the emails. You just keep thinking about them. But you can't seem to bring yourself into anything other than just thinking about them. That is a freeze response. Content creation paralysis, where you literally can't think of anything to create, or its sister, you create everything all the time, but you don't post anything. Those are two sides of the same coin as we're talking about freeze states. If you have ever felt like you're really foggy, you can't make good decisions, you might have even blamed perimenopause or menopause on your brain fog, when in fact, if you were to manage your stress differently, you may not be so foggy, because the brain fog in a freeze nervous system state is really impactful. The other way that freezing shows up is it makes you numb. It will make you literally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically numb. So if you've ever come home at the end of a long day and someone asks you how it was, and you're like, I don't know, I feel kind of numb, that's a freeze state. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not that you can't access your emotions, it's that you're so stressed, you're in a stress response. After you can regulate through a freeze state, your intuition will say things like, just write one sentence, or just write for 7 minutes, or just reply to one message today, or say, yes, you already know this is aligned, or your ideas are here, just trust the first one and go with it. Let's implement something. And then you might even be able to say to yourself, momentum matters more than perfection. So that's all with the freeze. And you can see how this would parallel biologically, back in the days when we weren't behind computers, we weren't working at a fast pace, when you needed to literally freeze to stay safe. So let's talk about fawning. Fawning is a relatively new term in the nervous system world, relatively being like last 10 years or so. And in super simple terms, fawning is people pleasing like your life depends on it. And here's the thing. Fawning can come forward if you have like a complex PTSD. It can absolutely come forward because it's very much linked to trauma, but it can also come forward as part of a stress response. So how it's showing up for you in your life is maybe you're lowering your prices before you've even tested anything, before anybody's ever even said no, before even anybody hesitates. You're already like, oh, well, you know what? Never mind. How about I charge you this amount instead? Where you're just like lowering your price without even a request to do so. Over delivering, over committing, over giving are all fawning. Saying yes when you want to say no is a symptom of fawning. Taking on clients you know are not aligned, that's fawning. Taking a job you know is not right for you, that's fawning. Reshaping your offers, your book, your dreams to please other people, that is fawning. And it's blocking your intuition because it's silencing your body's no. Your body has a felt sense of no. And when you're in a fawning response, that's really difficult to access. After you can regulate through this, your intuition will tell you things like, ooh, the right client is going to meet you right here. Or no is the most loving choice. Or just simplify it, aligned clients will really want this. Or rest, don't perform, your presence is enough. Okay, so we've talked about all four of the stress responses, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. One of the myths about this is that well, there's two myths I want to address right now. One is that you can choose which one you want to do. That is completely untrue. You don't get a choice. Your nervous system is going to choose based on what it perceives to be the threat. And the second myth is that you can only be in one at a time. That's pretty mind-blowing, right? You could be in what we call a functional freeze state, meaning you're in such a chronic stress state that you are always in the stress response of freeze. But then every now and again, something will come and put you over even the edge that you're already over and put you into a flight state in addition to your functional freeze. So your body is complex, and we make these maps like the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn just to be able to talk about really complex topics. But that doesn't mean that you are not complex. You are. You are very complex, meaning you can be in two or more of these at any given time. You can toggle between two, and you can be in these chronic stress states for literally years unless you are able to interrupt the stress cycle. So I want to be really clear. None of these stress responses are any sign of failure. They're not any sign of weakness. You are not bad. You're not doing it wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. I want to make that really, 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 really clear. Okay? Are we clear? You have been conditioned by our culture, by society to work through and to these stress responses. In fact, we kind of award working to a stress response. Like when I was a teacher, I remember there used to be this bragging contest by which person got there earliest in the day. Our contract hours started at 8:15 in the morning, and there were people there at 6. And those same people, boy, they weren't done when our contract hours were done at 3:45. Nope, they stayed until 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock. We're talking about consistent 10 and 11-hour days. And unless a leader is aware of how these chronic stress states and chronic stress responses can impact them and the work, it can be really easy to glorify that kind of behavior. It's toxic. It is not good for anyone. And if you think that working that long, that hard makes you more productive, you are telling yourself a lie. You're not more productive. You're not more creative. Your relationships are suffering. You're exhausted. Your health is suffering, and you're not accessing your intuition. So, when I say this is critical, I mean it is critical. And it starts with you. It starts with you as the leader. It is not selfish for you to regulate your stress. Everyone that you work with, everyone that you live with, everyone that you love needs to see you managing your stress. These are intelligent safety strategies that your body has developed over thousands of years. What we are doing in our current culture is treating them. We treat them. We will take an electrolyte packet if we're a little bit tired. We will take an ibuprofen if we have a headache. We will add caffeine if we're feeling sluggish. We'll add sugar if we need a burst of creativity. Now, I know if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are pretty careful with your health. And so maybe those things don't apply to you. But maybe you find yourself every now and again noticing that you feel like, oh gosh, I really need to get through this thing. So just this once, I am going to XYZ, fill in the blank. My invitation would be give yourself grace and compassion for knowing that you need a little push, and then start to pay attention to how these are showing up in your life. Where can you see yourself in any of these patterns? So I talked about this last week in my group coaching call. And it was really interesting to hear the responses because people could see themselves in different areas of the stress response. And one of the things that came up really clearly was the myth that you can only be in one stress response at a time. In fact, a lot of the people recognize that they might be in two or three. And depending on, the stimulus or whatever else was happening. And then the thing that I really want you to know, and I wanted them to know too, but I really want you to know, the thing I really want you to understand is there's nothing wrong with you. You're not bad for having a stress response. You're not weak. It is not a sign of weakness that your body is having a stress response. It is a sign of stress. So when we can begin to dial back the stress, things will shift. Now, here's another myth about stress. The myth about stress is you have to blow up your life and start it again. That's an option. I've done it more than once. I've done it. And, to a certain extent, it does work. There is an upcoming conversation with a guest that you're going to absolutely love named Pia. And we talk about this idea of learning to stay, learning to function and flourish within the conditions. And that can be done too, but it will take a perspective shift and it will take you dialing back your stress. So I want you to have some actionable things that you can use right now, today, to shift this. Sound good? Okay. So, some actionable things you can do when you notice any of these things happening in your behaviors or your body. Oh, we didn't talk about that. Let's talk about that. In your body, a stress response could feel like sudden diarrhea. Like you haven't eaten anything different, you haven't eaten at a different time, but all of a sudden you have to run to the bathroom because it's an emergency. That's a stress response. A headache that comes during a stressful meeting. It's not an accident. It's a response. Um, Stomach tightness or even stomach pain. That's a response. Muscle tension. A really common place for muscle tension is the back of the shoulders or the back of the neck, especially when you're taking on too much. When people take on too much, they very commonly have muscle pain in the back of the shoulders or in the back of the neck. Low back pain is often a sign of a stress response. Aches and pains in general can be linked to stress. And so it's a little bit about limiting your exposure to the stressor, but when you can't limit your exposure to the stressor, how do you deal with the stress? And that's where a lot of the things I'm going to talk to you about right now come in. So, the antidote to most stress is coming back to the present moment. When you're in a stress state, you're usually worrying about something that has happened or something that is going to happen. So, when you can come back to the present moment, it will actually eliminate some of that feeling of stress. So, a great way to do this is just touch one finger to the pad of your thumb and just make some circles. And just make circles with the finger and the thumb. And you'll just notice as you do this, if you do it long enough, and I do want you to do it long enough, you'll either get an urge to sigh or to take a deep breath or to yawn. So make the circles with your thumb and your forefinger. I'm doing it right now. Did you just hear me take a deeper breath? That's because my nervous system just responded to this. It is not a contest. This is not a competition about who can get to the yawn or the sigh or the deep breath first. Just wait until your body begins to relax. That's the winning combination. When your body relaxes with the yawn or the sigh, invitation to take 4 really deep, slow breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And the reason this works is it brings you back into the mindfulness. And when you're stressed, one of the things that can happen is your breathing becomes shallow, which exacerbates the stress because now you're oxygen deprived. So you have the physiological and psychological stress that has now become biological stress because there's not enough oxygen in your body. So taking a deep, deep, deep breath 4 times will really, really be helpful. And you can even do things like the box breath. And that would be where you have equal length of inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. This is one that I used to do when I was a teacher in my classrooms with kids, and we'd breathe in and hold and exhale and hold for a count of 4. And I still do this with adults, with the people that I work with in my professional development that I provide, in my trainings. We still do breath every single time. In fact, if you've ever been to one of my workshops or master classes or group coaching calls, you know that I start every call with breath. This is why. Because I want your body to be in that regulated state before we even begin, because you're going to get a different result. And so that's why when my private clients come in, I don't know, I'm revealing the meta of a client session right now. And those of you that are private clients that are watching, you're going to probably giggle. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time we start, I take a really deep breath and I sigh. And then I ask you, what is going to make this session feel like a really beautiful way to spend time today? And that sigh, because we're such empathic beings, When I take that deep sigh, I know that you'll mirror me because of your empathy and you'll take a deep breath. And so I'm very interested in watching your body begin to physiologically kind of unwind the stress before we even get into your session. It's really important because it's so funny when you come in a stressed state, you're going to want to solve a different problem than you'll want to solve when you're regulated. It's like the problem is going to look totally different. And that's why so many clients come in and they will say XYZ is the thing. And then when we get them into a calm state, they're like, well, no, actually what I would really like to do is talk about this. So if that has ever happened to you in a conversation with somebody that was mirroring you and helping you relax just with their presence, that's what's happening. It's pretty cool. So these are, in today's episode, so as we come to a close, we want to recap with your body is responding to stress all the time. As long as you stay within your window of tolerance, everything is going to work well. But when you move out of the window of tolerance into a stress response, whether it's a hyper activated stress response like fight or flight, or a hypo activated response like freeze or fawn, we want to bring the body back into regulation. And we can do that through some mindfulness, through some presence, through some breath. And it's such an important thing to remember because at the end of the day, your nervous system is your CEO. Your nervous system is calling the shots. And so, the same way that I said, I start a client session with a deep breath because the problem that you come in thinking you want to solve may not be the one you actually want to solve. This is the same thing in your life. If you are going through your life in a dysregulated state, stressed out all the time, you are very likely solving different problems than you actually want to be solving because the dysregulation is making it feel so unsafe for some of these things that you want to solve the thing causing you the deepest pain in that moment. Well, the thing that's causing you the deepest pain in that moment may not actually be something you can or should or even want to solve. We just need to get you back into regulation. If you have any questions about this, I'm open. I really want to have dialogue with you and make this as granular and helpful and tangible as possible. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. If you haven't tried breathwork and you want to, there is a free meditation on my website. It's at brendawinkle.com/feel better, all lowercase, all one word. It is a breathwork and futurescaping meditation, and it would be great to do to help you release some stress. Maybe you can dream into the future where you're not feeling as stressed. And here's one of the big takeaways that I learned over the last several years. Your stressor doesn't have to change for you to release the stress. All it takes is a commitment to regulate the body. And this is what I help people do both in groups and in one-on-ones, where we regulate the body so that we can figure out what is the actual thing we want to do to move forward into that like most authentic version of you. I I love coming here to record episodes for you. And I just feel like you're here listening with me, and it means so much. At the beginning of the show, I asked you to leave the podcast your rating and review, and I'm going to ask again. Would you please leave the podcast a rating and review? It just means so much. And I've been in calls with my ideal clients, people I really want to work with, people that I admire, people that I respect, people that I think I might be able to help and serve. And they've been so wonderful. I have felt absolutely inspired by these conversations. And I'm learning that many people want a combination of group and one-on-one work and maybe even retreats combined. And so to help me dial that in, I've created a very fast 1-minute Google survey. I'm going to put that link in the show notes. If you feel called to throw in your 2 cents, you can have a part of building whatever's coming next. Thank you so much for listening to Your Yes Filled Life. Bye for now. Until next time.